My daughter died 7 years ago. Every year I sent her husband $40,000 to take care of my grandchild. One day, she grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "Grandpa, don't send Dad any more money. Just follow him. You'll see." What I discovered next terrified me. I'm Harold Mitchell, 62 years old, and I've been running Mitchell Hardware and Steel for 30 years. Built it from nothing after my dad passed. Same way he built his life from nothing. Hard work, honest dealing, measure twice, cut once. That's how you build something that lasts. But some foundations crack without you noticing. It started on a Tuesday. Emma, my 7-year-old granddaughter, was helping me stack rebar in the back warehouse. She's got good hands for the work, knows how to handle the steel without scratching herself. Reminds me of her mother at that age, back when Lisa used to help around the shop during summer breaks. The afternoon sun was filtering through the high windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. I was checking the inventory sheets when Emma's voice cut through the sound of metal on concrete. "Grandpa," she said, her small voice carrying that serious tone kids get when they're about to tell you something important. "Can I tell you something?" I set down the clipboard and crouched down to her level. When a 7-year-old asks to tell you something in that tone, you listen. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" She glanced toward the office where Troy, her father, was supposed to be picking her up in 20 minutes. Then she moved closer, like she was sharing classified blueprints. "Daddy doesn't use your money for me." The words hit me like a dropped I-beam. "What do you mean?" "The money you send every January, $40,000. Daddy doesn't spend it on me. He spends it on other things, secret things." My hands went cold. For 7 years, since Lisa died in that car accident, I'd been sending that money religiously. Every January, same amount, same purpose. Take care of Emma. Make sure she had everything she needed. Food, clothes, school supplies, medical bills, everything a growing child requires. It's what Lisa would have wanted. It's what I'd promised her before she died. "Emma, how do you know about the money?" I heard Daddy on the phone. He was talking to someone about the old man's payment and how much longer he could keep it going. Her brown eyes looked up at me with an intensity that reminded me sharply of Lisa at that age. "He laughed when he said it, Grandpa. Like it was funny." My chest tightened. "What else did you hear?" "He said something about having enough saved up now, that soon he wouldn't need to pretend anymore." She looked around the warehouse at the organized stacks of steel and lumber, at the business I'd built with my own hands. "Grandpa, don't send Daddy any more money. Follow him instead. You'll see what I mean." Before I could ask more questions, Troy's truck pulled up outside. Emma's whole demeanor changed, went from serious to casual so fast it made my head spin. Kid had better acting skills than most adults I knew. "Hi, Daddy," she called out, skipping toward the truck like our conversation never happened. Troy barely looked at her, just grunted something about being late for dinner. Didn't thank me for watching Emma for the afternoon. Didn't ask how business was going. Didn't even make eye contact. Just loaded her up and drove off, leaving me standing in my warehouse with more questions than answers. I stood there, surrounded by steel and concrete foundation materials that had never once lied to me, and realized I might have been played for a fool. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 7 years. I pulled out my business records and started treating Troy like a vendor. When you're in the steel business, you learn to spot weak welds, substandard materials, anything that doesn't measure up to spec. Numbers don't lie and they don't have emotions clouding their judgment. I spread the bank statements across my kitchen table under the harsh fluorescent light. 40,000 times 7 years, $280,000 total. That's serious money. Building a house money, starting a business money, college fund money. More than most people see in a lifetime. I started making notes, the way I would when evaluating a major supplier. Payment dates, amounts, Troy's responses over the years. The pattern that emerged wasn't pretty. Every January I'd send the money. Every January Troy would send a brief text acknowledging receipt. "Got it, thanks," money came through. Never any details about how it was being spent. Never any updates on Emma's needs or activities. Never any gratitude beyond those clipped acknowledgments. And every November, like clockwork, Troy would text asking if I could send the next year's payment early. Always had some excuse. Christmas expenses, unexpected bills, emergency repairs. I'd always said yes because family helps family, and because I'd promised Lisa I'd take care of Emma. But looking at it now, with a contractor's eye for detail, the pattern looked less like need and more like manipulation. I picked up my phone and scrolled through 7 years of text messages with Troy. The conversation history told a story I'd been too trusting to see. Troy initiated contact only when he needed money or was confirming receipt. I was the one asking about Emma, about school, about her health and happiness. His responses were always brief, dismissive. She's fine. Everything's good. No problems. Never any stories about what Emma was learning or who her friends were. Never any invitations to school events or birthday parties. Just the bare minimum required to keep the money flowing. I closed the laptop and walked to the living room where Dorothy's picture sat on the mantel. My wife had died 6 months after Lisa's accident, her heart giving out from grief. The doctors called it cardiac arrest, but I knew the truth. She died of a broken heart, believing our daughter was gone and our granddaughter was all we had left of her. "I think I've been making a mistake, Dot," I said to her picture. A big one. I called up Charlie Rodriguez the next morning. Charlie's been my closest friend for 25 years, ever since he moved to town and needed materials to build his back deck. He'd retired from the police force 3 years ago, but once a detective, always a detective. If anyone could help me figure out what Troy was really doing with my money, it was Charlie. "Mitchell Hardware. This is Hal. Charlie here. You sound like someone stepped on your foundation. What's eating you?" I laid out the situation, Emma's warning, the $280,000, Troy's pattern of behavior over the years. Charlie listened without interrupting, the way good investigators do, occasionally making small sounds that told me he was taking notes. "You want me to run a background check on your son-in-law? I want you to help me figure out if I've been financing something I shouldn't have been financing." Charlie was quiet for a long moment. I could hear him tapping his pen against something, probably that old notepad he always carried. "This could get complicated, Hal. Family always does. You sure you want to know what I might find?" I looked out the office window at the lumber yard, at the business I'd built from nothing through honest work and careful planning. "Charlie, a foundation's only as strong as what's underneath it. If there's rot, I need to know before the whole structure comes down." "All right, give me a week." Charlie's investigation took exactly that long. He came by the shop on the following Friday evening after I'd locked up, carrying a manila folder thick enough to use as a doorstop. His expression told me everything I needed to know before he opened his mouth. "Hal, you're going to want to sit down for this." I poured us both coffee from the pot I keep in the office, the same industrial-strength brew I've been making for 30 years. Charlie spread out bank statements, photographs, and official documents across my desk like he was laying blueprints for a major construction job. Troy's got more accounts than a general contractor with trust issues. He showed me transaction records that made my blood pressure spike. Every January, my $40,000 would hit Troy's main checking account. Then, within 48 hours, most of it would transfer to 2 other accounts I'd never heard of. One domestic account in Troy's name only, and one offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Over the past 7 years, Troy's moved approximately $240,000 out of the country. That leaves about $40,000 unaccounted for domestically. What's he been spending it on? Charlie pulled out another set of documents. That's where it gets interesting. The domestic account shows regular payments to an apartment complex called Riverside Gardens, monthly rent payments for a unit that's supposedly vacant. He showed me property records. Complex is owned by someone named Carla Thompson. She's been collecting rent from Troy for 3 years on apartment 7B, which according to city records has no official tenant. The name rang a bell, but I couldn't place it. Who's Carla Thompson? That's the $1 million question, or in this case, the $280,000 question. Charlie pulled out a photograph. This is her. The woman in the photo was brunette, maybe mid-30s, attractive in a calculated way. She was coming out of what looked like a restaurant, laughing at something someone off-camera had said. She looks familiar, but I can't place her. She should. She's Emma's 2nd grade teacher at Roosevelt Elementary. The coffee mug slipped in my hands. Emma's teacher gets better. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. Charlie flipped to another photograph. This one showed Troy and the same woman walking together, his arm around her waist, looking comfortable and familiar. This was taken 6 months ago outside that same restaurant. He's been seeing Emma's teacher for at least 3 years based on the rental payments. But Hal, there's something else. Charlie's voice got that careful tone cops use when they're about to deliver really bad news. I did some digging into Carla Thompson's background. She went to college with Lisa. The room felt like it was shifting around me, like when you're working on a load-bearing wall and suddenly realize the whole structure's been compromised. They knew each other? More than knew each other, they were roommates their junior and senior years. Best friends from what I could determine. I set the coffee mug down carefully, afraid I might throw it. So Troy's been having an affair with his dead wife's best friend, using my money to pay for their apartment, while letting me believe I'm supporting Emma. That's what it looks like. The rage that hit me was like touching a live wire. 7 years. 7 years of believing I was doing right by my granddaughter, honoring my promise to Lisa, taking care of family. And the whole time, Troy had been running a con, using my grief and sense of responsibility to fund his relationship with another woman. "There's more," Charlie said quietly. "More?" I pulled Lisa's accident report, asked a friend in traffic to let me take a look. He handed me a photocopy of the official report. Reading it made my hands shake. The investigating officer noted several inconsistencies that bothered him at the time. The car went off Highway 15 at a straight section of road, perfect visibility, no weather issues. Lisa was an excellent driver, Hal, never even had a parking ticket. What are you saying? I'm saying the accident scene didn't make sense then, and it makes even less sense now. The car burned so completely that identification was only possible through dental records. Records that Troy provided. Troy identified the body. Troy arranged the cremation. The pieces were falling into place like steel beams fitting into their designated slots, creating a structure I didn't want to see completed. "Charlie, you think Lisa might still be alive?" He looked me straight in the eye. "I think you need to consider that possibility." But the funeral, the cremation, the death certificate, all handled by Troy. All based on his identification of remains that were too badly burned to recognize. Charlie leaned forward. "Hal, what if your daughter didn't die in that accident? What if Troy and Carla staged the whole thing?" The warehouse felt like it was spinning. Everything I'd believed for 7 years, every assumption I'd built my grief and my decisions on, suddenly looked as solid as a house of cards in a windstorm. Why would they do that? Your money. $40,000 a year, guaranteed, from a man too honorable to ask questions and too trusting to verify the details. Charlie gathered up the photographs and documents. They created the perfect setup. You send money to take care of Emma. Troy and Carla use most of it to finance their life together. And nobody questions anything because everybody believes Lisa is dead. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the town I'd lived in my whole life. The place where I'd built my business and raised my family and buried my wife. If Lisa's alive, where is she? That, Charlie said, is what we need to find out. Charlie and I spent the weekend planning our next move like we were designing a complex structural project. We needed blueprints, measurements, and a systematic approach to find out if Lisa was really alive and where Troy might be keeping her. First thing Monday morning, I'm going to check property records for anything connected to Carla Thompson, Charlie said. If she owns that apartment complex, she might own other properties. What about the Cayman Islands account? That's trickier. Offshore banking has privacy protections, but I've got a contact at the FBI who owes me a favor. Money laundering cases sometimes crack those accounts open. Monday came and Charlie worked his contacts while I tried to run my business like nothing had changed. But everything felt different. Every customer who walked through the door, every delivery truck that pulled up, every routine transaction felt surreal when you're wondering if your daughter might be alive somewhere. Charlie called me around noon. "Hal, I found something. Carla Thompson owns 3 properties in town. The apartment complex, a small house on Maple Street, and a storage facility on the south side. Storage facility? Industrial property, mostly empty units. But the interesting thing is, one unit has been continuously rented for the past 7 years, paid for through an LLC that traces back to Troy's domestic account." My hands tightened around the phone. 7 years, same timeline as Lisa's accident, same timeline as your payments. That afternoon, we drove out to the storage facility. It was one of those places you pass 100 times without really seeing, a collection of concrete block buildings surrounded by chain-link fence. The kind of place people store furniture when they move or businesses keep excess inventory. We parked across the street and Charlie pulled out binoculars. Unit 47. That's the one Troy's been paying for. The building looked like every other storage facility in America. Roll-up metal doors, numbered units, no windows. But as we watched, a woman emerged from Unit 47 carrying a small bag of groceries. Even at a distance, even with longer hair and a thinner frame, I recognized her immediately. "That's Lisa." Charlie focused the binoculars. "You sure?" I raised that girl. "That's my daughter." The woman walked back into the unit and closed the door behind her. We sat in silence for a long time, both of us processing what we'd just witnessed. "She's alive," I said finally. "She's alive, but she's not free." Storage Unit 47 doesn't have proper ventilation, plumbing, or electrical for residential living. Someone's set up basic utilities, but it's essentially a prison cell with a roof. The rage I'd felt earlier was nothing compared to what hit me now. My daughter wasn't just alive. She was being held captive probably for the past 7 years, while I unknowingly paid for her imprisonment. "We call the police now," I said. "Not yet." Charlie lowered the binoculars. "We need more evidence. Something that proves Troy and Carla are holding her against her will. Otherwise, they could claim she's there voluntarily, that she wanted to disappear." "What kind of evidence?" "Recorded confession would be best. Get Troy or Carla to admit what they've done, preferably both of them together." "How do we do that?" Charlie smiled grimly. "We set a trap. Over the next 3 days, we planned the operation like a major construction project." Charlie contacted his former partner, Detective Vince Anderson, who was still active on the force. Anderson agreed to provide backup and recording equipment once we had a solid plan. The strategy was straightforward. I would arrange to meet Troy at the hardware store after hours, ostensibly to discuss adjusting Emma's support payments. Charlie would position himself outside with surveillance equipment. Detective Anderson would be nearby with a tactical team ready to move if things went wrong. Most importantly, I would be wearing a wire. "The goal is to get him talking," Detective Anderson explained as he fitted the recording device. "Act like you're suspicious but not certain. Let him think he can still manipulate you. People who've been running cons for years often get overconfident." Thursday evening, Troy arrived at the shop exactly on time. I'd left the front door unlocked and was waiting in the back office when he walked in. "Hey, Hal, thanks for agreeing to meet. I know you're busy." For 7 years, I'd seen Troy as my son-in-law, the man taking care of my granddaughter after losing his wife. Now I saw him clearly for the first time. The way his eyes didn't quite meet mine, the practiced casualness of his voice, the subtle arrogance of someone who thought he was smarter than everyone around him. "We need to talk about the money, Troy, the support payments." "Sure, what about them?" "Emma mentioned something interesting the other day." His posture shifted slightly, became more alert. "What did she say?" "She told me you don't spend the money on her." Troy laughed, but it sounded forced. "Kids say all kinds of things. You know how it is. She probably doesn't understand how expenses work. Maybe, but I've been looking at my records and I'm curious about something." "What's that?" $280,000 over 7 years. That's a lot of money for one child's expenses. Raising a kid is expensive. Hal, food, clothes, school supplies, medical bills. It adds up fast, I'm sure it does, but Emma seems to think you have other expenses. "Secret expenses." The mask slipped for just a second. Troy's face went carefully blank, the way people look when they're buying time to think. "I don't know what you mean. Offshore accounts ring any bells?" This time the reaction was unmistakable. Troy's face went pale, then flushed red. His hands clenched into fists. "I think there's been some misunderstanding. Has there been? Because I've been doing some investigating, and some interesting things have come to light." "What kind of investigating?" "The kind that reveals Cayman Islands bank accounts and rental payments to storage facilities." Troy stood up abruptly. "Hal, I think you've gotten some bad information from somewhere." "Have I? Or have I finally gotten good information after 7 years of lies?" "I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do." I stood up too, feeling calmer than I had in days, because I know about Carla Thompson. I know about the apartment you've been renting. And I know about storage unit 47. The blood drained from his face completely. "That's right, Troy. I know Lisa's alive." The silence stretched between us like a cable about to snap. Troy stared at me, his face cycling through emotions I could read like blueprints: surprise, panic, calculation, and finally resignation. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Long enough to understand what you've been doing with my money." Troy sank back into the chair, all his fake confidence evaporating. "It's not what you think, Hal." "Then explain it to me." He ran his hands through his hair, looking for the first time like the small-time con artist he really was, instead of the grieving widower he'd been pretending to be. "It started as Carla's idea. She knew about your promise to Lisa, about how you'd take care of Emma if anything happened. We needed money to start over somewhere else, and you had it. So you faked my daughter's death. We didn't plan for it to go on this long. It was supposed to be temporary, maybe a year or two until we got on our feet." 7 years, Troy. You kept my daughter locked in a storage unit for 7 years while I paid for her imprisonment. She's not locked up. She can leave any time she wants, can she? Or have you convinced her that she can't? Troy's jaw tightened. Lisa understands the situation. If she surfaces now, if anyone finds out what we did, she'll be charged as an accessory. She helped stage her own death. Hal, that's a felony. The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost believed him for a second. Almost. You're still lying to me. I'm not. Lisa didn't help stage anything. You and Carla manipulated her into this. Probably convinced her it was the only way to protect Emma or some other story you fed her. Troy's silence told me I'd hit close to the mark. Where's Carla now? I don't know what you mean. She's your partner in this. Where is she? Probably at home. It's a school night. Call her. Why would I call her and tell her to come here? Tell her there's a problem with our arrangement. Troy hesitated, then pulled out his phone. He dialed, waited, then spoke in a voice I'd never heard from him before, worried, urgent. Carla, we've got a situation. Hal knows you need to come to the hardware store right now. He listened, then hung up. She'll be here in 10 minutes. Good. That gives us time to talk about Emma. What about her? What happens to her when you and Carla go to prison? For the first time since this conversation started, Troy looked genuinely afraid. She's my daughter. She's my granddaughter. And she's the one who figured out what you were doing. Emma doesn't know anything. Emma knows you don't spend my money on her. She knows you laugh about the old man's payments. She knows you've been lying to everyone for years. Troy's face crumbled. She's just a kid. She doesn't understand. She understands more than you think. Kids always do. Carla arrived exactly when Troy said she would, walking through the front door like she owned the place. She was prettier than her photograph suggested, but there was something cold in her eyes that no camera could capture. What's going on? She asked Troy, then noticed me. Harold, this is unexpected, is it? Because I've been investigating your little operation for the past 2 weeks. She looked at Troy, who shrugged helplessly. He knows about the accounts, the storage unit, everything. Carla's expression didn't change. I see. That's it. That's all you have to say. What would you like me to say, Harold? That I'm sorry that we didn't mean for it to happen this way. I'd like you to tell me where my daughter is and why you've been keeping her locked up for 7 years. Lisa's fine. She's safe. She's healthy. And she's exactly where she wants to be. In a storage unit in a place where she doesn't have to face the consequences of what she did. The gaslighting was so blatant it was almost impressive. What she did? You mean what you did to her? Carla smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Lisa made her choice 7 years ago. We just helped her follow through on it. That's when Detective Anderson and his team came through the front door. Troy Patterson, Carla Thompson, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, false imprisonment, and a dozen other charges. The next few hours were a blur of arrests, Miranda rights, and paperwork. Charlie coordinated with the police while I rode with Detective Anderson to the storage facility. Lisa was sitting on a folding chair when we cut the lock on Unit 47. She looked up as the door rolled open, squinting in the sudden light like someone emerging from a cave. Dad? Hello, sweetheart. The reunion was everything and nothing like I'd imagined. 7 years of grief and anger and hope all compressed into a moment that felt both eternal and too brief. She was thin, fragile, confused about what was happening, but she was alive. The legal proceedings took months. Troy got 15 years for fraud and false imprisonment. Carla got 12. Both were ordered to pay restitution. My $280,000 plus damages for what they'd done to Lisa. Emma took the truth better than any of us expected. Having her real mother back seemed to matter more than understanding why she'd been gone. Lisa's recovery was slower. 7 years of psychological manipulation doesn't heal overnight, but she's strong. Always was. She works at the hardware store now, learning the business, building a new foundation for her life. We're doing well. All 3 of us. The business is thriving. Lisa's getting stronger every day, and Emma's happy in a way I haven't seen since she was very small. I still check the books every month, verify every transaction, measure everything twice. Trust needs regular maintenance like any other structural element. But we're building again. Slowly, carefully, with materials we know we can count on. Looking back at this whole experience, I learned something important that I want to share with you. I spent 7 years being the kind of man who trusted family without question, who sent money without asking for receipts, who believed what people told me because I wanted to believe it. That kind of trust nearly cost me everything that mattered. Don't make my mistake. Family or not, blood relation or not, verify what people tell you, check the books. Ask the hard questions. Trust, but inspect the foundation regularly. When someone's asking for your money, especially large amounts over long periods, you have every right to know where it's going. That's not being suspicious. That's being responsible. And listen to the kids in your life. They see things we miss. Emma saved our family by having the courage to speak up when something didn't seem right. If a child in your life tries to tell you something important, stop what you're doing and listen. Really listen. Your family is worth protecting, but you can only protect what you're willing to examine honestly.